Have you ever felt that something or someone was quietly draining your soul empty, but you just couldn't let go? That strange emptiness that creeps in, even when you're surrounded by people. That haunting feeling that you're no longer where your spirit belongs. What if I told you this isn't just emotional fatigue, but a deep spiritual signal from your unconscious, begging for release? According to Jung, the people we hold on to the hardest are often the very mirrors that reflect our most hidden wounds. And when we refuse to let go, we're not just clinging to a person. We're clinging to illusions, projections, and outdated versions of ourselves. This refusal creates noise. It distorts the connection with your inner self. And that disconnection? It's why you feel lost, anxious, detached from the universe and from your own truth. But what if letting go wasn't the end? What if it was the portal to something sacred? In this video, we're going to unveil what truly happens spiritually. When you decide to release someone who no longer aligns with your energy, you're about to discover that this isn't just about moving on. It's about returning to your essence, reconnecting with your spirituality, and unlocking a level of clarity and mysticism that was always inside you, waiting. Many people watch these videos and never subscribe, even though their soul resonates with every word. If this message already speaks to your inner world, don't leave this page without subscribing. Join this growing universe of seekers, people who, like you, are ready to stop surviving and start awakening. Because what we're about to explore might just change the way you see love, loss, and your entire spiritual path. Stay with me until the end. The revelations you're about to receive could be the beginning of your deepest transformation yet. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when your soul begins whispering that it's time to release someone. Not out of resentment, not because love has vanished, but because your inner universe no longer expands in their presence. Jung taught that every relationship is more than coincidence. It's a mirror, a sacred reflection of the unconscious. Those we attract aren't random. They emerge as symbols, carriers of what's buried deep within. When a bond shifts from nurturing to draining, it's not just your heart that knows. Your body, your energy, your dreams begin to speak. This is the voice of your spirituality rising, calling you home. But the signs of disconnection often arrive subtly. Exhaustion that no rest can fix, a lingering anxiety, or a quiet unease that clouds your joy. These aren't just emotions, they're messages from the unconscious. In Jungian psychology, these discomforts are the soul's way of knocking on the door of awareness. The more you ignore them, the louder they become. You may think you're holding on to the person, but often you're just holding on to who you were with them, or worse, who you hoped they'd become. That illusion keeps you bound. Letting go, then, is not rejection. It's a sacred act of self-honoring, guided by your own mysticism. And yes, it hurts. Letting go is never without pain. You're not only releasing a relationship, you're releasing a vision, a storyline, a version of the future, woven with invisible threads. But within that unraveling is a mystical doorway. According to Jung, real transformation begins in the chaos, the moment you allow the old self to fall apart. Letting go is like shedding old skin. It's not death, it's rebirth. A deeper spirituality emerges in this sacred destruction. You're not becoming less. You're creating space for alignment with your true self. Many people avoid this process because they fear the emptiness. But that emptiness is sacred. It's where the new seeds are planted. In mysticism, the void is not the absence of life, but the womb of all possibilities. When you finally let go, something ancient shifts inside you. Energy returns, clarity sharpens, and the universe, always listening, always responding, begins to send new signs, new frequencies. This is the subtle magic of spirituality. Nothing real is ever truly lost. What's meant to stay, stays. What leaves, teaches. So instead of resisting, observe. Start small. Write down the feelings that arise when you're alone. Notice recurring dreams or symbols. Pay attention to synchronicities. These are whispers from the soul, tools for navigating this inner shift. Letting go is not a passive act. It's an initiation into higher consciousness, and as you step through that doorway, you'll begin to notice the next layer of truth waiting quietly, patiently, just beyond the veil. At first, the void feels unbearable. It's that heavy silence after the final goodbye, the hollow echo where connection once lived. Most people run from it. They fill it with distractions, rebound relationships, or the noise of routine. But those who walk the path of spirituality understand the void is not punishment, it is initiation. Carl Jung viewed this space not as a loss, but as a sacred pause, a blank canvas where the new self begins to emerge. When you let go of someone who no longer aligns with your frequency, the universe doesn't punish you with absence. It prepares you for rebirth. This emptiness is not really empty. It's alive with potential. In mysticism, the void has always held a paradox. It is both death and genesis. Think of the cocoon, dark, silent, seemingly lifeless. And yet, within that space, transformation unfolds. When you release what no longer serves you, you descend into a similar cocoon. The ego panics. It wants to return to what's familiar. But if you stay, if you breathe through the discomfort, something sacred begins to stir beneath the surface. This is the first breath of individuation. The real you, untouched by projections, illusions, or the expectations of others, begins to take form. It's in the stillness that the unconscious begins to speak louder. You may dream more vividly, feel things more intensely, or even question your sense of identity. That's the point. The universe is stripping away who you thought you were to reveal who you truly are. In Jungian terms, this is the confrontation with the self, the inner blueprint that's been waiting patiently beneath layers of conditioning. Most never reach this stage because they fear the discomfort of not knowing. But that discomfort is the gate. To pass through, you must embrace the unknown with reverence. There is no map here, only signs. A sudden pull toward a book, a random stranger who says something that lingers, a moment of clarity under the stars. These are not coincidences. They are sacred communications from the universe guiding your rebirth. The void becomes mystical when you stop fighting it, when you allow it to exist without needing to fix it. That's when real transformation begins, not when you rush to fill the space, but when you finally learn to sit with it, listen to it, honor it. And as you learn to rest inside the void, you begin to feel something unexpected. Peace. Not the peace that comes from answers, but the peace that comes from surrender. You realize that letting go didn't break you. It broke the illusion. The stillness becomes a sanctuary, a portal, and just beyond it, something new begins to form. Something truer, freer, and more deeply aligned with your spiritual essence. Resistance is a tricky spirit. It often disguises itself as loyalty, as hope, even as love. But beneath its mask lies the ego, afraid, clinging, unwilling to face the truth of change. Carl Jung taught that the ego is deeply attached to the known, even if the known is painful. It prefers the illusion of control over the chaos of transformation. When we resist letting someone go, it's rarely because of who they truly are, but because of what we've projected onto them. We create mental images, stories, fantasies, and then we fall in love with those illusions. That's not love, that's attachment. These projections are powerful. You might think you miss someone, but often you're mourning the role they played in your inner story. Maybe they mirrored your need for validation, or embodied a dream you once had about the future. In mysticism and psychology alike, this is called the shadow dance. You don't see the person clearly. You see your unmet needs wearing their face. That's why resistance feels so intense. It's not just about them. It's about the pieces of yourself you haven't yet integrated. Letting go means confronting those parts directly without using another person as a screen. The ego resists because it fears the collapse of identity. Who are you without that relationship, without that story? But this collapse is sacred. Jung believed that the breakdown of the ego is a necessary step in the path of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. Your projections don't disappear on their own. They dissolve only when brought into the light. And spirituality is the art of bringing light to the unseen. Through inner work, journaling, dream work, silent observation, you start to recognize the patterns. You begin to see where you've confused attachment with love and fantasy with truth. This moment of recognition is painful, yes, but it is also liberating. Once you see that the person you're clinging to is not real, but a symbol, a projection, a mirror, you begin to reclaim your power. The mysticism here lies in awareness. When you remove the veil, what remains is clarity. You no longer chase illusions. You begin to seek alignment. You begin to ask, what is truly mine, and what was only a reflection? And that question alone can unravel years of emotional entanglement. This is how the universe invites you to see beyond the surface. And so, resistance, once understood, becomes a guidepost. It shows you where healing is needed, where inner reconciliation must take place. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you stop confusing love with dependency. When you drop the projection, the heart opens again. This time, not in desperation, but in presence. In true spirituality, to let go is to see clearly. And in seeing clearly, you open the door to what comes next. What's real, what was waiting behind the veil all along. Beneath the surface of daily life, the unconscious is constantly speaking, not with words, but through symbols, dreams, synchronicities, bodily sensations and emotional echoes that seem to come from nowhere. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious doesn't simply lie dormant. It's an active participant in our spiritual evolution. When you're meant to let go of someone or something, the universe doesn't shout. It whispers. A recurring dream, a persistent knot in your stomach, a strange tension in your chest when you're with that person. All of it is language. And if you're listening, you'll hear that your inner world already knows what your conscious mind is afraid to admit. We've been conditioned to overlook these signals. In a world obsessed with logic, instinct is often dismissed, but spirituality reawakens our sensitivity to these mystical messengers. That sudden wave of sadness, that repetitive number pattern, that inexplicable déjà vu, they're not random. They're fragments of your inner universe breaking through the noise. The unconscious is always a step ahead. It knows where your energy is leaking, where you've betrayed your own needs, where a connection has become a cage. And the longer you ignore its calls, the louder and more disruptive they become, until the body itself becomes the battleground of your suppressed truth. Jung referred to this process as the tension between the ego and the self. The ego wants control, it wants comfort, but the self, the totality of who you are, wants growth. So when you resist a needed release, the self will speak through dreams, through fatigue, through patterns that repeat until finally acknowledged. You might find yourself attracted to the same kind of relationship over and over, each time hoping for a different outcome. This is no accident. It's your psyche's way of illuminating what must be healed. And mysticism teaches us that these loops are sacred, not punishments, but portals to awareness. When you begin listening, everything changes. Suddenly the world feels alive with meaning. A song lyric speaks directly to your soul. A random stranger mirrors a thought you just had. A dream reveals the very thing you've been avoiding. This is not magic. This is alignment. When your inner and outer worlds begin to sync, you realize that spirituality is not found only in temples or books, but in the ongoing dialogue between your unconscious and the living universe. Your life becomes a conversation, and every symbol, no matter how small, holds the key to deeper clarity. To listen is to slow down, to turn inward. Try writing your dreams. Observe how your body reacts in certain interactions. Sit in silence and ask your unconscious, what am I not seeing? You might be surprised at what rises to the surface. The more you listen, the clearer the signals become. The unconscious never stops speaking. The question is, are you ready to hear what it has been saying all along? There is a sacred moment, often quiet and unexpected, when you realize that what once defined you, a relationship, a title, a version of yourself, no longer fits. It's like wearing clothes tailored for someone else's life. Letting go, then, becomes an act of returning, a return to your core, to your spiritual center, to the truth that was buried under layers of roles and attachments. Jung taught that the self is not something to be created, but uncovered. It has always been there, waiting patiently beneath your compromises, your masks, your projections. When you release what no longer resonates, you begin to hear its voice again. At first, this space can feel like absence, but stay a little longer and you'll begin to notice a stirring, an urge to create, to explore, to feel without needing permission. This is not coincidence. It's your inner universe reawakening. The very energy you once used to hold someone else close now flows back to you. That space they once occupied becomes fertile ground, and in that sacred soil, new passions begin to grow. Passions that are not inherited or imposed, but entirely your own. This is where spirituality begins to feel personal, alive, embodied. The process is not always linear. Some days you may feel clarity and strength. Other days, you may grieve the version of yourself that once felt safe inside that old life. This too is part of the mysticism of transformation, the dance between who you were and who you're becoming. Jung's concept of individuation teaches us that wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means integration. You begin to reclaim your fragmented pieces, the artist you silenced, the dreamer you dismissed, the truth-teller you buried, and welcome them home. And then something magical happens. Your frequency changes. You no longer chase connection. You attract it. People begin to appear who speak your language, who reflect your truth instead of your wounds. Opportunities align. Synchronicities increase. This is not fantasy. This is what happens when you live from essence instead of expectation. The universe doesn't reward you for letting go. It meets you there in that sacred alignment between surrender and authenticity. Spirituality becomes less about seeking and more about allowing, less about effort and more about resonance. So if you feel empty, lost, or uncertain after letting go, know that you are closer than ever to your true self. Keep listening. Keep creating space. What's emerging is not just a new chapter, but a new consciousness, one rooted in mysticism, guided by intuition, and fueled by a deeper sense of purpose. And just as you begin to recognize yourself again, the next stage of your evolution begins to unfold. To love and to let go, these two often feel like opposites, but in the realm of deep spirituality, they are twins. Carl Jung believed that real love begins where projections end, and most of what we call love is laced with projection, with the need to possess, to control, to keep someone frozen in the image we've created. But love, in its purest form, is freedom. It is the willingness to hold space for someone's soul, even if their path leads them away from you. This is emotional liberation, and it begins when you separate love from attachment. Attachment clings. It says, "You belong to me." But love listens. It says, "I see you, even if you must go." In mysticism, this distinction is vital. True love is not transactional. It doesn't say, "I'll love you if you stay." It says, "I'll honor what your soul needs, even if it breaks my heart." That is not weakness. That is the strength of a soul aligned with the universe. Letting go of someone you love is one of the most spiritual acts you can perform because it means choosing truth over illusion, growth over stagnation, and freedom over control. Think of the open hand versus the closed fist. The fist tries to hold, to trap, to preserve. The open hand offers and trusts. Trusts that what is aligned will remain, and what is not will find its rightful place. Jung reminded us that relationships are often the theater of the unconscious. We act out our inner conflicts through others, but when you begin to love without needing to own, the performance ends. The projection dissolves. What remains is presence, the ability to be with another, fully, without turning them into a character in your inner drama. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. Quite the opposite. You feel more deeply, more clearly. Without the fog of control, love becomes sharper, purer, like a river flowing without walls. You love. Not because you fear loss, but because love itself is the current of your soul. In this space, spirituality becomes embodied. You don't just believe in freedom. You practice it. You don't just speak of mysticism. You live it. And in doing so, you allow others to do the same. That is how emotional freedom begins to ripple outward, transforming every connection it touches. So if you've ever had to love someone from a distance, know this: your love wasn't wasted. It was purified, stripped of ego, of expectation, of grasping. And in that purification, your own essence rose to the surface, luminous, strong, unbound. To love without attachment is not to feel less. It is to feel more authentically. And that level of love can only be accessed when you're ready to step into the next phase of your becoming. Energy never lies. While words can deceive and thoughts can wander, your energetic field is always truthful. When you hold on to something that no longer aligns, a person, a memory, a version of yourself, your energy contracts. You might feel heavy, foggy, restless without knowing why, but when you finally let go, something profound shifts beneath the surface. Carl Jung taught that transformation begins in the unconscious, but it echoes outward. Letting go is not just psychological or emotional, it's energetic. It alters your vibration, and that vibration determines what you attract, what you create, what you allow. At first, the change may feel subtle, a breath that feels deeper, a night of sleep that feels more complete, but then it builds. You notice more clarity, more ease in your chest, less noise in your mind. This is your energy field recalibrating, returning to its natural rhythm, unburdened by the weight it was carrying. Mysticism tells us that when you release what is dissonant, you make space for resonance. And in that space, spirituality takes root not as a concept, but as lived experience. Your very presence begins to feel different to you and to others. People might say you seem lighter, or there's something different about you. That something is alignment. You're no longer leaking energy into what was never meant to stay. Instead, your energy flows inward, then outward, clean, strong, magnetic, and the universe responds. Not with grand fireworks, but with synchronicities. A message arrives at the perfect time. A stranger says something that mirrors your private thoughts. An unexpected opportunity opens before you. These aren't accidents. They're reflections. Your inner shift creating outer echoes. Letting go is a reprogramming. You're telling your unconscious, I no longer choose pain disguised as love. I no longer mistake familiarity for destiny. This declaration reorders your inner cosmos. You become less reactive, more intentional, and as you move through the world with this refined frequency, you begin to attract connections that honor who you are, not who you used to be or who you tried to be for someone else. In this phase, spirituality becomes electric. Your body becomes a vessel of mysticism. The universe flows through you, not just around you. So if you felt a sudden surge of peace after letting go, trust it. If you've sensed the world bending gently in your favor, listen. These are confirmations, signs that your inner universe is syncing with the greater one. Letting go isn't just a decision, it's a transmission, and the energy you now carry is preparing the ground for what's coming next. More aligned, more expansive, more attuned to the truth of your becoming. Letting go is not a single act. It's a practice, a sacred rhythm you return to over and over as you evolve. People often believe that release is something you do once and move on. But Carl Jung taught that the unconscious is layered, like an ancient manuscript written in invisible ink. Every time you grow, new parts of you rise, and with them, new layers must be shed. Letting go becomes a way of life, of peeling back what no longer fits, so that your truest self can keep emerging. It's not weakness, it's refinement, the continuous sharpening of the soul. You don't just release people, you release identities, belief systems, timelines you once clung to out of fear. You begin to notice how much of your suffering was born from holding on to outdated versions of who you were supposed to be. In mysticism, this is known as soul shedding, a process where the self outgrows its old shell. Jung warned that what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. When you don't let go, you don't just stagnate, you repeat. The same pain, the same lesson, the same disguised chance to choose differently, but each release is a vote for your evolution. This spiritual discipline changes everything. With every conscious release, you strengthen your alignment. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from truth. Your universe shifts. You no longer attract relationships that mirror your wounds, but ones that reflect your wholeness. Letting go, then, is not the end of love or connection. It's the end of distortion, the beginning of purity. The mysticism lies in how your inner reality starts to rewrite your external world. Suddenly, you are living from possibility, not programming, from clarity, not chaos. Make it a habit. Scan your life regularly. What is still alive and what is just familiar? Where are you operating from alignment, and where are you operating from history? Keep a journal. Track your patterns. Sit in silence. Ask the universe to show you what's ready to be released. And when the signs appear, as they always do, don't resist. Let go with reverence. Each time you do, you plant seeds for a future that reflects your essence, not your conditioning. And in this process, the future becomes fluid. You are no longer trapped in loops. You are the author, the architect, the alchemist. Every layer you shed reveals a new vision, a new path, a new level of connection with your own spirituality. You begin to realize your future isn't something waiting ahead of you. It's something you're creating breath by breath, choice by choice, release by release. So tell me, what have you been holding on to that your soul is already ready to release? What part of you is whispering in the quiet that it's time to let go? Share your experience in the comments. Your journey may echo someone else's awakening. And if this message spoke to your spirit, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. That's the only way to make sure you won't miss the next revelations that can realign your path and expand your consciousness. Your next step might already be waiting for you in the next video that's about to appear on your screen. I'm grateful for your presence here. Until next time, Celestial Truths.